Hello, everybody. I'm Daniel, and I'm currently a part-time student at the University of the Sunshine Coast. I'm studying a Bachelor of Arts degree with a major in history and geography, and I'm also a father to an 8-year-old daughter who will inherit the planet we're currently destroying at an exponentially increasing pace. I would like to leave her with a more positive legacy, which is why sustainability and ethics are so important to me. While reviewing our first 7 weeks of learning, I must admit to being somewhat confused as to how concepts and themes link together, and what it means for me as a person whose career aspirations are primarily in the field of history. However, as I delve further into the readings, I have come to understand how intrinsically concepts of sustainability, ethics, and related issues such as climate change and the economy are linked. While my ultimate career goal is to work in the field of history, I act in a way that I hope promotes a positive legacy, and I firmly believe that understanding our past helps shape our decisions and actions into the future. While the first written text detailing the idea of efforts to reduce the impact of growing demand on resources was widely attributed to Thomas Malthus's essay addressing the principle of population in 1789, it was in the 20th and 21st centuries that the idea of sustainability gained traction. From the former Norwegian Prime Minister, who shares the same birthday as myself and Star Trek's George Takei. Don't worry, Star Trek is relevant to this conversation later on in the piece. Gro Harlem Brundtland's work, Our Common Future, in 1987, to the 2015 Paris Agreement and the 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development, which consists of the 17 Sustainable Development Goals, it is clear that the discourse surrounding sustainability became more popular as urgency increased. Hayden Washington's idea of sustainable development being an oxymoron due to the finite resources available on our planet has redefined sustainability as I have always understood it. It has reframed the lens through which I understand concepts such as recycling and my carbon footprint. I had always thought of myself as having a relatively low impact on the Earth due to my exclusive use of public transport and limited consumption of electricity. However, I learned that through the consumption of red meat alone, my carbon footprint is much larger than I would have assumed. Something that resonated with me across themes and readings is the disconnect between intention and reality. When looking at the 17 Sustainable Development Goals as drafted by the United Nations in 2015, and the related 6 transformations to achieve the Sustainable Development Goals, it is clear that some of the transformations required to achieve meaningful change were unlikely to be achieved without strategic, planned actions at every level. Perhaps it is with the hindsight of knowing what has transpired in the years since these goals were written that I find myself somewhat incredulous that this was considered achievable. For example, while in the Paris Agreement, Australia committed to a target of reducing emissions by 26 to 28% by 2030 against 2005 levels, the fact is lack of policy, a reluctance to tax emissions, and political complexities have led to our emissions increasing year on year since 2014. Schmidt et al. 2020. This piece interested me, as in 2021 my family moved from a typical suburban house block to higher density living. I did a little further reading outside of the course materials and discovered that a study by Perkins et al. Showed that people living in high density inner city dwellings use less energy than suburban counterparts. While notably this includes emissions from transport, I found this to be very interesting and the data supported my decision making from an ethical viewpoint. Speaking of ethics, it is timely to mention that the understanding for humanity to thrive, we must have awareness of our need as rational creatures to make decisions based on what is right or wrong. As a complex and multifaceted subject, ethics can be viewed through several frameworks. In particular, deontological, or action-based, virtue-based, and teleological, which focuses on consequences. The aforementioned Star Trek reference, the needs of the many outweigh the needs of the few. Where I found I could conceptually apply the notions of ethics to my learning about sustainability was in understanding the role of the economy against these two considerations. I will try to explain this in a way that makes sense. For me, one of my key learnings thus far has been how to make such high-level concepts as economic considerations, social issues, and environmental impacts relevant to me in my current situation. Reading the Earth Charter provided clarity in understanding how the puzzle fits together. Notably, the Earth Charter references shared values and principles, a need for sustainable focus, and the importance that economic fairness will play in success. This links back to concepts of weak sustainability, which views money as a substitute for nature, versus strong sustainability, which has a functioning ecosystem as its central goal. Investigating further into the role economics plays in sustainability and ethics, I found the concept of donor economics, as explained by Raworth, particularly compelling. What resonates for me is the recognition that economics, social issues, and environmental issues are interdependent, and success cannot be siloed. Further to this, if we recall the 17 sustainability goals as listed by the UN, the social priorities are referenced in this model. Raworth calls for action to update our economic approach, focusing on social needs, which should challenge our ethical principles. These include the recognition of market power, the need for accountability at a policy-making level, the value of the individual, and the need to utilize creativity. If I look at a relevant example within Australia, Franks et al. Argue that there is a complexity when evaluating the cumulative impacts of coal mining across social and economic and environmental factors. While an increase in cash flow into a region increases spending and jobs, there is an associated cost in building infrastructure and support, while also undeniable impacts on the environment, including, but not limited to, habitat loss, water quality impacts, and pollution. This is one example of many, and the takeaway for me is that there is no easy answer or one-size-fits-all solution. While the concept of phronesis as practical wisdom back to Aristotle, this is still useful in our modern world as we can use shared knowledge and wisdom to inform decision-making. To me, sustainable phronesis is gathering as much practical wisdom regarding sustainability and using that knowledge by applying our best judgment to matters of conservation, ethics, and politics for the benefit of the current and future generations. This ties in with the complex idea of the global commons. The complexity around fair and equitable access to resources which are not necessarily evenly distributed throughout the planet should not be underestimated. As described by Garrett Hardin, the term tragedy of the commons delves into this idea further, arguing that where there is access to resources, individuals will act in their own self-interest, thereby depleting availability and access for others. If you then add in the compounding issues of economic inequity and political unrest, it is easy to see how something that seems quite simple on the surface would be extremely difficult to put into practice with full intent. In a course that has thus far challenged me to think across disciplines and considerations, this one concept is the one that makes the most sense to me as relatable to my present and future. While history is a study of the past, the philosophical phrase, "those who cannot remember the past are condemned to repeat it," seems particularly pertinent to this situation. It seems that addressing sustainability with the correct approach and scaffolding to ensure success will rely on using learnings from our past. While historical decisions in this context may be in living memory, it seems more important than ever that we do not forget our successes and failures, and not be afraid to be honest, bold, and hold ourselves and our governing bodies accountable. While we may not have met goals and deadlines set in the past, in order to leave a positive future for the next generations, I hope that I am able to apply my understanding to educate others and continue my journey. While career aspirations are certainly a consideration, for me the utmost relevance is that I have a child who will inherit this earth in whatever condition we leave it. Thank you all. Here are my references, and thank you for listening to this presentation.